everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Everything Went Black podcast. This week, I introduce to you the mysterious band Carrion Empire. If you dug Murderbait, then Carrion Empire is definitely for you. Incorporates a lot of the same elements, yet displays an expansion of sound and concept that falls in line with a lot of the things that I really enjoy. Before we get going, I want to shout out the other members of the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse, a group of elite content creators at war with mediocrity. Kicking things off twice a month, we have Brandon Legion's Horror Wolf 666. Up next, Jackie Smith brings us Into the Necrosphere, the finest metal podcast in the land. Of course, midweek, we have Everything Went Black. I return with Mike Scandato and Jeff Kashid for Necromaniacs. To round out the work week, we have Spitball Media. Over the weekend, Carl Hikara brings us Soul Knox. Carl actually publishes 2 episodes a week, the first of which drops on Thursday. Carl and I are full on into our collaboration known as Darkness Weaves, where we explore the work of Carl Edward Wagner. Right now, we're deep into the Kane short stories. Every other month, we switch which show publishes the episodes. But it's been a lot of fun, and I hope any weird fiction, dark fantasy fans out there are checking out Carl Edward Wagner. A lot of his stuff is kind of hard to find, but Valancourt Books have recently, well, actually not even recently, it's been over a year since that came out, republished In a Lonely Place, a collection of some of his great horror fiction. Also, our newest member is Cheyenne of Trivax. He brings us Iblis Manifestations. And that's pretty much the whole 9 yards, man, for this thing. Every day of the week, we got something cool in store for you guys. If you're interested in supporting the show, in addition to just listening to it, you can financially contribute to the well-being of Everything Went Black by joining the Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you get bonus episodes. For $5 a month, you get early access to the shows. And you also can become a sponsor. And with that $25 a month level, you will get a custom ad read for your project, your band, your podcast, your business, whatever. And right now I'd like to welcome Jace, Hayden, and Chris to the team. They're our latest Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much. Each and every one of you is appreciated. And I love doing this. And there are some expenses, such as server space, etc., things like that. And every little bit helps. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'm happy to be back on. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This Carrion Empire, I'm going to call it a recording. I'm not going to say it's a demo, because it definitely doesn't sound like a demo. It sounds like a pretty fully realized effort. So when this came into my possession, I was definitely interested, primarily because I was a huge Murderbait fan, and there's some similarities and possibly some similar members between both bands. And but when I listened to the material that you sent over, is, as they say in Thailand, same but different. There's a more cinematic quality to the newer material, to this Carrion Empire version, or this incarnation, or whatever you want to refer to it. And yeah, it's I have to give you props and say that, yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong in hearing some similarities there, especially the last 3 Murderbait albums, which is pretty much all you can find online these days, which is intentional. The progression that we were going in, this is in a lot of ways sort of the next, a continuation of that, with with Murderbait, we had been around so long that it had really just developed from one thing into a completely different thing over time. So when things came to a point where it looked like that band was that chapter was coming to a close, the members that were going to continue on that are in Carrion Empire, we had a lot of discussions about what was next. And it was really just the idea was to not only continue on in the direction that we were going, but also more focused and more realized right out of the gate. And that's just not something I've personally ever done, other than when I was in punk bands as a kid. So yeah, it was just a nice opportunity to sort of see like who we were and know who we were and what we wanted to, what the end product and the vibe, the entire package, what it was going to be before we even started. So these two songs, like you mentioned, they're not, I wouldn't call them demos either. They're going to just be our first offering for songs that are available. I'm not sure exactly how yet, but we'll see. I would love for them to be on as something like a, split or a 10-inch type situation, but at the very least, at least something digital for folks to listen to know who we are, and know what's coming next and to anticipate what's coming next. So we're in the process of writing a full album, and it'll be definitely along those lines. So again, wanting to really have that focus in terms of what sound we're really trying to make in a cohesive way.
Yeah, that's interesting. You touched on something that's as a creative person, I find it interesting when one thing ends and another thing starts. And the three Murderbait records I have they're all very different. And like you were saying earlier, there's a progression in the music. So to play devil's advocate, it's just like, and this is something that there's no right answer to. It's just when you realize that something has run its course, like it was that the case with Murderbait, like collectively, it's just like, okay, the statement is over with. This story's been told.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I mean, the pandemic hit, we lost our practice space, and there were some other things that just sort of came to the forefront that led us to a point where we really had to step back and figure out what to do going forward. And for me, it just seemed like the right time to close that chapter and to start fresh, which is a little intimidating to do when you're in your 40s. And but at the same time, again, I had never, when I started Murderbait, it was essentially, it was a completely, like I said, completely different band, a completely different project. I really had when I first started, I had no intention, frankly, to ever do anything real with it or even play out. So obviously this band, we have every intention to play shows, to put out albums. We again have a much more focused idea of who we are and what our identity is as a band and what kind of music we want to produce. So and not to say that that's not going to still change, because there's still some evolution that happens. I always, as an artist, want to have the freedom to, write an album that's completely different than a previous album. I think it's a sort of purgatory for any artist to try to replicate what they've done in the past to please other people. I mean, if it's one thing if that's just who you are and that's the the art that you produce and you connect to and you can continue to connect to it, then there's nothing wrong with that and you feel that. I mean, personally as a listener and as a art enjoyer, I appreciate and I could feel it. It seems to me that I can feel when an artist is still connecting with whatever music they're doing, even if they're essentially reproducing the same album over and over again. But again, it's I want to give myself that freedom, and as a band we'll have that freedom. But we we're coming out knowing exactly what we're wanting to do, and I've never really started a project or even an album with that type of solid concept in mind. It's just kind of been a piecework, song by song type situation. Whatever comes out. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, just like on an emotional level, like it must be freeing to sort of end one thing, close that door, and then open this other door into a whole other limitless possibility. That's like, people who don't play music or are creative, that might not necessarily be something that that they connect with, because I've been in several bands, and I remember there have been times when one band ends, and I was talking to my mother, and she's like, well, how come you broke that band? Why don't you just keep playing with the same guys?
Mm.
I'm like, well, ma, things end, they come to an end, and we all want to do something different, and that's got to be an incredibly like freeing moment when you decide that, one thing's over with and it's all run its course, and then there's this new thing, and it just seems like it's a pretty much a blank canvas.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to say that I am that positive of a person that when Murderbait came to an end, when I realized that chapter had closed, that I just jumped right into feeling excited about a new project. But I wasn't. It took
Oh,
me,
really? Okay.
yeah, I mean, it took me a couple years to really start getting excited. And again, I think part of that is just situationally, we were all in the throes of a global pandemic, and the future seemed so uh, foggy and unknown. So what music and live music was going to even look like in the future, we just it was so up in the air. So I definitely went through a time where there was some grieving and just feeling lost and lacking in inspiration. And I spent some time during the pandemic uh, writing some essentially soundtrack type music
Yeah.
on my synthesizers and drum machines and whatnot, and which, which is definitely translating over to Carrion Empire. Uh, it's a lot of the music I've been listening to over the years. Is a lot of different combinations of music all over the board, genre wise, but I I'm constantly coming back to film score type music, whether it's actual film scores or music that would essentially work well in a film. And so I just, got to a point where I was just starting to write that stuff on my own. And then as time went on, started really missing that, camaraderie that comes with being in a band, uh, where, I'm writing and singing and, doing playing synthesizer in a context with other folks. And so when we finally started getting together again and playing and writing music, it was, I mean, I felt like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders, and a dark cloud parted, because it was, yeah, it was a difficult time. But now, once that once it finally got off the ground and we started playing music again, I it's absolutely been that situation that you were describing of just, oh, it's exciting again. It's refreshing. The possibilities um are definitely outweigh the feelings of grief or uh sadness of one chapter closing. It's just like, yep, that's over. We had a good run, and I'm excited about what is to come with Carrion Empire. So
It's interesting. You mentioned like a couple of years, and it doesn't seem like that long. It seems like when I saw you in Portland, that's like almost 2 years ago at this point.
exactly, yeah.
It seems like that was like just a few months ago, but it's crazy how time has been sort of like there's like time passes in a weird way. I don't know if it's getting older or just what we all been through the last few years, but it just feels like time jumps ahead and in a very strange way these days.
Oh, I find myself thinking about that all the time. um Constantly thinking like, oh, that was just a couple years ago, and then realize, fuck, that was 4 years ago. Or even, yeah, even a couple months ago, and realize like, oh, that was years. I just recently saw a good friend of mine that I've known since I was, probably about 18 or 19, and realized that, I knew had been some time, but I'm thinking like, oh, it's been probably a few years since I'd seen him, and then realized when we were hanging out that it had been 10 years had passed.
Oh man.
Um, and yeah, it just seems to be the way things are lately.
So you shared some of that film score stuff with me a while ago too, and I definitely see the connection between that and the Carrion Empire stuff. I mean, Carrion Empire is more like obviously more like a rock band,
Mm-hmm.
or more band oriented, but it also has that cinematic soundtrack quality to it. The music seems like it takes its time to develop,
Mm.
and there's a sense that the songs are like longer and more sort of meditative, especially with the vocals. You know what I mean? Like the way the vocals are sort of far away, it seems like, at least in the mixes that the most recent
Mm-hmm.
mix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's just interesting. I mean, what was, so, you said there's a focused idea with Carrion Empire. So what was that idea specifically that you wanted to do with this thing?
Well, as odd as it might sound, I've kind of almost pictured a scene in my head when it comes to writing music for this band, and when it comes to our aesthetic and everything. Um, and it's just been essentially where I've felt I've been over the last, I'm not even sure how many years, probably at least a dozen. But this sense of essentially sitting on a precipice on the edge of a forest, overlooking the slow fall of mankind as we know it, or at least society as we know it. And the name Carrion Empire is very much reflective of that, where it's essentially this, at least for me and a lot of folks I know, feels like we're right at the end of these aspects of society that we've all come to see as being forever, and they're just how things are. And it seems more and more as time goes on that these things will are starting to collapse and or are on the brink of complete destruction, and finding solace at the same time in that, and recognizing that these things aren't sustainable the way that that mankind is existing in nature is not sustainable for our planet and, you know, the environment we share. So something has to give. And then seeing the beauty that comes out of decay in nature, that things grow off the back of something that's died, and that's beautiful, and that's how it's supposed to be. And so seeing, in as dark as that might seem, seeing some hope in that and seeing the beauty in that, that's essentially just where I've been for a while now, and just really, you know, con- contemplating those things and mulling over on those ideas and wrestling with some of those ideas. And that's sort of like the picture in my mind when we've been developing Carrion Empire, is from that standpoint, is like essentially making a soundtrack to the fall of mankind as we know it. And not to say that humankind is going to just cease to exist, but it can't continue on the way it has for very much longer. And so again, seeing the beauty that is to come from that fall and that decay, uh that's essentially the one of the few hopes that I have for our future.
That's interesting. It's a heavy concept, you know, and what most interesting, what I find is when I asked you what the concept for the band was, or where it was this very well thought out sort of thesis about what, not I've asked that question to other people. What's your plan for the band? I want to like rip solos and, have like play like in drop A or something like that, But this is like more of like a story, and I think that really, I respond to that more than any kind of like description of what the music's supposed to sound like, because I think I'm also more on like the coming from the emotional side of creation, creativity, and I kind of approach things a similar way, where I have more of an idea or an emotion or a picture, and then the music sort of builds around that. And one of the things I think about that as well, like the cyclical nature of mankind, and how there's like, to me, there's indications that this is like over and over and over again into infinity, or
Mm-hmm.
until the sun supernovas, that
Mm-hmm.
mankind is going to almost come to a point where he's reached this sort of like heavenly state, but then falls from grace and back into this pit,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so even with ancient civilizations, all this you read about, like societies rising and falling, and maybe even being at the same technological level that we're at right now, but disappearing, having some cataclysm, or even like some slow decay. Like the Roman Empire, it took 500 years, I think, at least for that to disappear, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where we're at right now, is like maybe we're receding.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And for me, I can get really dark with it and easily feel exceedingly hopeless. But especially since I have kids, they're all older now, but still, even more so now, because
Yeah.
they recognize and understand these things as much as I do, if not more. And so it kind of forces me to try to see some hope or good in things, even if it's bleak and brutal in its like reality. But again, I continue to turn back to nature to find solace and find hope, and seeing how things in nature are constantly, you have something will, an invasive species, for example, will come and take over a forest to the point where it starts to choke itself out, because there's nothing left to feed off of, and then it dies. And then nature it heals again, and that balance starts to restore. It sometimes it takes hundreds hundreds of years, so it's not in our lifetime that we'll see that balance likely, but even just knowing that this is how, like you said, like civilizations have risen and fallen, and that rising and the falling is necessary for the health and maintaining of balance in nature. It's, again, to me, that's beautiful even in the darkness. So that, yeah, that's sort of the place that I have come to, have been, and really wanted to convey that, because for me, that music should always be something that is a reflection, or a um, something that pairs well with your experience. Otherwise, it's just noise. And so, really focusing what we're doing on that feeling, that, like, almost even beyond a feeling, because feelings can change and come and go. You can have a very emotive album that goes from everything from being pissed off to, mourning, or sweet sentiments, like, and I think that's great and beautiful. But you can still have essentially a the word I'm looking for, it feels more like a residence in terms of where you are. And so you can, as human beings, we have, a slew of emotions, and a spectrum of emotions. But if you're still in that same place, it's going to feel cohesive. And so, again, that's where I keep coming back to, is with this project, is with this band, is to put myself in that place, recognize this is where I am, this is where I can relate, and then explore everything within that space. So explore the beauty and in awe of the forest, of nature. Explore the feelings of mourning over everything that we've become, and everything that we're losing, all the horrors of mankind, and seeing hope, and just everything, allowing us to really explore all that stuff, but still staying in that same place.
So as of right now, I've only heard two tracks, and I don't know if the titles are working titles or if those are the actual titles of the songs. But do you have any more material, recorded, or at least written at this point?
Yeah, we have a few other songs that we're still working on, and uh, two of them are pretty much finished and written, just working out parts and all that sort of stuff. We're all pretty what's the word I'm looking for? We're all very, very, at this point now, like, very particular about our parts, our tone, our execution, everything. So we spend a lot of time. We're not one of those bands that just rips through a ton of songs all at once. So, but yeah, we have a few other songs that are on the table that are being written. And I mean, like you said, all of them are on the longer side. So it really wouldn't, it's not going to take a lot more songs to complete a full album time wise, especially if we put it out on vinyl and um, want it to sound good. But yeah, so we're actively writing, and we really only started playing and writing songs in about mid-December. So this is still pretty new.
Oh wow, okay.
So yeah, just getting off the ground.
I mean, it sounds, all the material I've heard sounds just completely like in its final state, and like it feels like you guys have been well, it feels like the band is this version has been working on this material for months. You know what I mean? Like for like a year. Like this sounds like the end result of a long process. So it's I'm excited to hear the other stuff when it's ready.
Yeah, me too. I'm really happy with the way the songs have come out. I'm not surprised because again we've been working on them for a while, and the other guys in Carrion Empire are, some of my closest, dearest friends, and we've been discussing this project for a while and really honing in what it is that we're going to be doing next. And then even in the writing process, we oftentimes will start writing, get to a point where it feels like it's a song, and then I don't know if it's the self-deprecation or if it's a healthy part of the process. In either case, we usually go through a point where we question everything about the song, but then that gives us an opportunity to look at it from our own listeners standpoint, and to make sure that is this really what we're wanting to do, whether it's the entire song. I mean, there's been times where we've really started working on a song for a while and then got to a point where we're like, this isn't really us, this isn't really what we're wanting to, um it's not reflecting our, not, I hate to use the word mission, but our vision. um and so we just throw it out or completely overhaul the song to make it something unrecognizable to what it was originally. And that's often what I mean, I get to a point where I'm obsessive about all that stuff. So as soon as somebody is like, is this really working for us, is this really what we're, is this really in line with our vision as a band? Even that question, it's like, well, if you're even asking that, then the answer is no, or at least not as much as it should be. So I again, I'll completely dismantle the song and figure out what it is exactly that is not landing right, and then really lean into the parts that are in line with what we're wanting to do.
That's like really, really difficult with a group of people to do that. And I definitely give you guys credit for it because the ego oftentimes gets in the way of a process like that. And I think the best work comes out when you can reflect on those things.
Yeah, I mean, as a songwriter, I definitely tend to, with this project especially, I write songs backwards in a way. I think a lot of folks will write a song based on a riff or part that they like, which that's happened.
Mhm.
But I tend to do most of my writing with the idea, like with trying to figure out exactly what context I'm wanting to play it, what emotion I'm wanting to evoke, essentially what the finished product I want that I'm trying to go with should be and will feel like, and then I start writing from that standpoint. Um, and so oftentimes in songs, if we start writing a song with a riff or a particular part that is spurring the song to be written, at some point I'll I will essentially pause and reflect on what's the end result, what as a listener am I going to want to hear. And it's what's led me to write a lot of music that is a lot more uh drone focused and a lot more long form, because for me personally, I've had a lot of albums that I've written or songs that I've written that I've listened back to and thought, God, I just wish there was more space in this song. Um, whether to give it time to breathe or to allow this part to develop, because I'm just not quite done with this part or feeling this thing. The song brought me to a place and then just like moved on, and I wasn't ready to move on. And so a lot of the songs are intentionally very, like you mentioned, meditative, and that's absolutely intentional. Again, a lot of the songs that for this project are essentially written to be the soundtrack to this contemplative place to just sit and reflect and sit and feel the entire spectrum of emotions of what it is to exist in this time that we are in right now.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of space, and that, I mean, just talking to you about all this stuff, it definitely is. I can't imagine these songs like being short or having, I just think that the length and the sort of vibe of everything, with all the space, definitely works with the concept that you're trying to put forth.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Now, is the writing, I mean, is it collaborative at all? Like, I mean, the riffs and all that stuff. I mean, you have a very specific way of doing this. So how do the other members fall in line with all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely collaborative. I tend to, just my nature is I'm obsessive, and so
Yeah.
usually, but yeah, one of the band members, myself or one of the other guys, will sometimes come up with a riff, and it's like, oh, I could, listen to that all day long. And that's usually the litmus test for me, is if you can play something over and over and over again and just get lost in it, then that's what I want. There's a time and place for something that's a catchy hook here and there, but really the building something off of a part usually takes for me something that is just almost hypnotic. And the other band members are great with, they'll come with something sometimes, and like, I've just been playing this and I just can't stop playing it, and we'll just take some time to you know riff off of that. And then usually the next few days I'm not sleeping, and it's just in my head all day long, and I'm listening to it over and over again on a shitty iPhone recording.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
And just obsessing over, what is a song needing, where does it want to go. um and I again will construct and deconstruct over and over and over again until it gets to a point where we're all feeling very good about it. And that's essentially usually the process. And I'm usually the one that's coming up with the full structure, but it's very, very much collaborative, in terms of, like, one of the band members will say, hey, I feel like it needs something here, or I feel like this is too much, or I feel like this is too little. And so we're constantly working with each other to get to a point where we all are feeling the song the way it should be. Because the last thing I want to do is play music or write music that one of us is feeling bored or unconnected, not connected to. I've done that before, and it's not it's not enjoyable.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've like filled in a couple times in bands, and it's been, like I'm not one of those guys who can like fill in a band or join someone else's band, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, as far as the recording process goes, do you guys work like in your own space, or did you go to a different studio, or was it sort of a combination of in a studio and then on your own? Like how was that process?
Well, the actual recording, I mean, leading up to the recording, we now, especially since we're using drum machines, it's really easy to record at home and have it sound decent enough, for demos to send back and forth to each other, in terms of the writing process. But then once we had the songs worked out completely on that side of things, and then in the practice space playing them, making sure, hey, this is exactly what we'd want to play live, and what we're going to want to play when we go into the studio. Then at that point we went into the studio. Same same guy that we've recorded with Murderbait. Shadowlands is recorded with this guy too. Adam Pike from Toad House. He's just a great guy. He does back of house sound for Red Fang and now High on Fire as well. And just a super, he's just got a great ear. And he's the only person that I've recorded with that I didn't absolutely hate my vocals at any point. So usually I get to a point where there's some point in the process where I am contemplating giving up playing music ever again, or especially singing.
Yeah, man.
And with him, he's just so great at, he mixes as he goes and in his mind, he said, he's told me before that he does that because it really helps figure out what each part does need to do and where it needs to sit, because as you're building and recording each part, it's at least close to what the end product should be, instead of waiting to the very end to mix everything. And I just love that process, and he's always great with working with me on my ridiculous ideas, and has always just done a great job. And we really like working with him. So we recorded the whole thing in the studio with him. This was my first time recording any songs with just drum machine. I've recorded some songs with drum machine as more of a background with live drums on top, but that's going to have a different feel and needs to be less present and not as full. So this was a whole different process for me. But yeah, it was good and enjoyable, as always with Adam. He's been a great guy to be friends with and work with.
Now, on the lead up to our conversation, I watched a bunch of the Murderbait videos, and is that visual component going to play into Carrion Empire? I'm assuming it is, since the songs already sound like film scores.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I mean, I've spoken with one of the guys that did one of our videos, and the Murderbait videos, and spoke with him about getting together to do a video for Carrion Empire as well. And so that's on the table, and I have some ideas in terms of those visuals, and in a lot of ways I think it's actually going to sort of be a continuation and almost like a long story between all of the different videos that sort of have some of those same elements, um and but again, in sort of a progression.
Yeah, that makes sense. So now, as far as do you have like any kind of projected timeline for when this stuff's gonna come together, and you might have like a public release of all this material?
It's it's on the fence. I mean, we're at the point now where I think the songs are pretty much ready to be mastered. And I, as you know very well, this is some of the conversations that we've had in the past. I've been playing in bands for a long time, and I love writing music. I love creating music, but I hate the band business side of things. And so I've never been good at it. And so the my urge is to just put out music and put it out there and just to move on to the next thing, because that's what I want to do. I just want to keep moving forward. But that doesn't work well when you don't sell enough albums to make money to pay somebody to record again. And so
Right.
um I've run out of things to sell. And so I got to figure out a way to, as much as possible, to be smarter about that. And so, yeah, I mean, I think at this point where we are pretty much ready to, you know, it'll be a pretty quick turnaround to release these songs. And frankly, if these two songs just get released digitally as sort of, even though they're finished, and like you said, more than just a demo, they'll probably end up on a full length at some point. Um, Even if they're just putting them out into the ether so that we can get something going for a full length album in the future, with whether it's with a label or figuring out how to fund it on our own. That's I guess all the stuff I'm trying to figure out right now. Like I said, I would love if a label or somebody said, "Hey, yeah, I want to let's put this out on a 10-inch." I'd be thrilled. We also Murderbait, before we split up, we recorded one last song, and it's a cover song. We covered a Motorhead song.
Oh,
I'm not sure if you're familiar with "God Was Never on Your Side."
I didn't know
Um,
that one actually.
it's more of a ballad, so it's kind of strange for Motorhead. It's a great song. Um, the lyrics are great, something I really connected with. And so we did it as Murderbait and made it even more us. So it sounds nothing like Motorhead anymore. But we recorded and actually brought in a guest musician, uh, Matt Pike from Sleep, High on Fire. Um, Played guitar, extra guitar on it, and did some background vocals. And so we've been
Wow.
essentially just sitting on this song for almost, at least 2-3 years now. So what I mean, at some point I'm thinking soon finish. It's almost fully mixed. There's a few things I need to do to finish that mixing, and then obviously I need to have it mastered. Um, but in a perfect world, somebody would, again, say, "Hey, I want to release these songs, that song, and these other two songs," and so that again, we can have some help in putting that out on some sort of physical media. But I've gone through the process of trying to contact dozens and dozens of labels and friends of friends, and I've never had any success with that. So at this point now, I just want to keep making music. I just want to keep putting out something that I feel connected to, that people that I trust and respect also feel connected to, and that's all that matters to me. And just got to figure out how to fund it constantly, which
Yeah.
is always the hardest
It's
part.
the age-old question, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely keep me in the loop. I mean, I'm really, I mean, I was blown away by the two track. I mean, I even like the soundtrack, the score stuff you sent a while back too, but this, the Carrion Empire stuff is to me it's really interesting. It's like something I'm really into, this style, this whole vibe that you're putting out there with this. And definitely keep me in the loop when you're ready to release something, and I can, have this, get the listeners here to check it out, or even like, the guys that in the other podcasts that I kind of associate with would probably dig it as well.
Yeah. I appreciate all the help we can get. Again, like I said, that side of things I appreciate. I've just never been good at it. So um,
I actually haven't been good at it either, man. Like I can't I don't, I'm like the worst guy to promote his own material, you know what I mean? Like I never really want to like you know shove my stuff down people's throats. Like you run into
Yeah,
people out there on the road or just in bands, and all they do is promote their band. Check us out, check us out. And that's not me. I'd rather
yeah,
put out my stuff, play the show, play live, make the release, and then talk about other bands. You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I think, yeah, I I couldn't agree more. I mean, I it's really hard talking. I can talk about music and everything and the process, and so talking with you is always great because you're a musician. We can you get it, and we can talk about the actual like nuts and bolts of things and the emotions behind it, and so it's interesting and fun. But if it's more just focus on, if it feels like it's more about me or about like promotion, self promotion, it there's a mental block for me that just starts feeling really gross and feeling really exhausting. um like you said, I'd much rather talk about other bands and what's going on, or talk about the process of getting there, and oh, what sparks your creativity, how do you get to this point, and what are even gear, like what are you using to create that sound, and oh, that's such an interesting way to approach things. And so again, things that all inspires me, that's all exciting to me. It's You lose me when you just talk about how cool your band is. um that just yeah, I have a tough time with that. And frankly, if I had to choose, and I've spoken with, I know you've had a conversation with Davey from Dry Wedding. um Him and I are good friends, and we've had this conversation countless times, because it can be really discouraging as a musician, to especially when you're writing something that's a little bit more genre fluid, that you don't have a built-in crowd, and it could be really, it could feel just like a constant uphill battle in terms of booking shows and the right shows and getting people there and getting the attention that you may deserve, in his case definitely deserves. um and so but again, I've had this conversation with him several times, where it's like, if I had to choose between being underrated as a musician, as an artist, or overrated as a musician, as an artist, obviously not, being appreciated in your time is the optimal, that's the greatest, that's the hope. But if you had to choose between overrated or underrated, I would absolutely choose underrated, because at least if you're underrated, it means that you weren't appreciated, but the value was there. If you're overrated, it means that you're just a flash in the pan, and you're lacking substance, you're lacking value. And in some ways, it probably aired too much on being just like, I just do not ever want to be an overrated band, that it almost makes me more resistant to any kind of self promotion, if that makes any sense.
no, it totally does, and I feel the same way about it too. It's like I would rather people didn't know who we were than to see us and think that, oh, those guys are not nearly as good as everyone says they are. You know what I mean? That would be devastating to me. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And just again, like having, if I'm not able to add some value to, whether it's a craft, like creating music, you know, if it's not inspiring someone to do something and continue on in a direction, or continue to make music and to create, I mean, my biggest hope is to make something that's of enough value that inspires others to create something way better than I could ever create.
Yeah, it's
um
definitely an interesting, pretty lofty goal. Definitely.
yeah. It's not even for myself, it's not even for like, oh, I want to be this thing so that everyone sees that I'm the greatest. I don't That is not at all in my scope of what I want as a goal. It's more just, I just want to create something so that again, it inspires others to create something better. And so again, you never get that way being an overrated band. I feel like overrated artists are really good at self-promoting. They're really good at promotion in general. They're really good at marketing, which is fine. It's an art in itself. But in most cases, because I've seen so many bands come and go, so many bands get huge out of nowhere, and many of them were bands that really didn't do anything new at all. They just hopped on, this trend or this bandwagon that was, popular at the time. They were good at marketing themselves, and so they just blew up. And sure, they're skilled. They're, oftentimes pretty good musicians, but, again, they're not adding anything. And to me, that it's essentially like being in a cover band. You being in a cover band is a really easy way to make a buck. I know folks that have joined cover bands that realize, oh my God, that you can actually make money playing music, but it's other people's music. But people show up to what they know. And so it's it's essentially a path that somebody else forged for you. So of course it's going to be easy. And again, I have a day job. A lot of us have day jobs. We all have to put on a mask and whore ourselves out to something at some point in our lives. That's just the nature of capitalism. But when it comes to art, for me personally, that's not what I want to do in terms of what I'm pouring my soul into. I just can't pour my soul into something and my time into something that feels like it's somebody else's. It's not even mine. And it doesn't give anything to anyone else in the future.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could never do that. I would rather that would be like a slow death playing in a cover band for me.
Totally.
You know what I mean? But yeah, thanks for taking time out tonight. I'm really excited about Carrion Empire, and those tracks you sent over are great. And yeah, I'm gonna put one at the outro of this episode so the listeners can check it out. And definitely keep me in the loop. And I'm going to, when you have something out, I'll share all the links, and I'll make sure all the other guys in the podcasting realm that I'm in know about it. And maybe we can all make something happen, man. I think it'd be great.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I cannot understate how much I appreciate you and your support over the years. It's been just really great getting to know you on a personal level. And then again, love your music, love what you do, and love the connection that we've made over the years. And yeah, I just really appreciate you. Thank you.
But yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. And definitely keep your ears out for Carrion Empire. And you can, whenever there's breaking news on the band, you can find it right here. So guys, I'll talk to you next week. Take care.